Hello guys, this is Scott from Nostalgic Nightmares, and welcome to my book review of Goosebumps Horrorland number 1, Revenge of the Living Dummy. Now, I know I said at the end of my last book review of A Ghastly Shade of Green that I was going to review a Shivers book next, but I kind of wanted to go to the Goosebumps Horrorland series because when I bought these a few months back, I actually read some of them. I haven't read them all yet. I actually stopped reading them because I decided I want to do some reviews. And because I read some of the first few quite a while ago, I want to review them while they're still fresh in my memory. So I thought I'd jump right in with obviously number 1, because that makes sense. So yeah, Goosebumps Horrorland number 1, Revenge of the Living Dummy. It's a sequel to quite a number of old Goosebumps books. So you've got the original series, Night of the Living Dummy 1, 2 and 3, and to some degree One Day at Horrorland. And from Goosebumps 2000, it's a sequel to Bride of the Living Dummy and Slappy's Nightmare, and technically Return to Horrorland. Now, obviously, I didn't know before reading this how much it would carry on from those particular books. And like I mentioned in the previous video, I did want to read some of the original Goosebumps again before I read these, because it's been that many years since I've read them. But like I said, those books aren't to hand at the moment, so I can't get hold of them. I just wanted to jump straight in with a new series, just one that I've not read ever. So, knowing a lot about the Goosebumps series, there's not going to be a lot that will carry on from previously, so I thought it was pretty safe to jump in and just start with a brand new book anyway. But yeah, I was just dead excited to start this book because not only is it a brand new book, so I have no knowledge of what happens whatsoever, I was really interested in the fact that there is 2 parts of the story. There is the original part, the first part of the book is like a brand new story, and the second part is a continuing storyline throughout the Horrorland series. But now, I've mentioned in the introduction video as well that I didn't know how I was going to review these because of the 2 separate parts. And I've had a bit of a think about it, and I think I've decided that I'm actually going to only review the first part, the brand new story. Well, they're both brand new, but the individual story, I'm only going to review that today. And the reason being for that, because the Horrorland sections of the books are quite short, they're kind of really disjointed in terms of reviewing them. It's like, I felt like reading that as well. It's kind of like you start to get into it and then it stops. You start to get into it and then it stops. So I think what I'm going to do is from book 1 to 10, which have the 2 parts, and I believe book 11 and 12 are just solely in Horrorland, or Panic Park, but I'll get to that. So yeah, for the first 10 books, I'm going to just review the stories at the beginning, or kind of the first 3/4 of the book. And then once I reviewed those 10, I will do another review, which is of the Horrorland series itself so far, as in the actual short parts at the end. So that's like an extra book, so to speak. So that will mean that the Horrorland review series will be at least one review longer than it should be, because there'll be for lack of a better term, another book slotted in the middle after number 10 before number 11, which will be all the Horrorland part. But I think for my sake, reading them and to help me review them, it would kind of give me more of an idea of how good the Horrorland part is, because it's so kind of disjointed, being like 20-30 pages each book. It is kind of like jumping in and out of a story every now and again once you've just read a really good story from Goosebumps. So yeah, I'm going to review it that way. If people don't like that, please let me know and I might amend it along the way. But I just think that's the best way to kind of keep track of the Horrorland series before jumping into book 11 and 12, where it's going to be solely Horrorland. So yeah, let's get on with this first book. And so this is what happens. In the first scene, we are introduced to our characters, our main 2 characters, who are Brittany Cosby and her best friend Molly Malloy, which is a really annoying name to say. Molly Malloy, it's like a tongue twister. And yeah, they're best friends, but in a really strange opening, they're actually in a graveyard in the middle of the night. And they're saying there's thunder and there's rain, and it's really dark and really scary, and they're in the graveyard in the middle of the night, and they both got spades, and they're actually digging a grave. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read Goosebumps for so many years, and I'm so excited to start reading them again. Am I right in thinking this is one of the only books that starts kind of in the middle of the story and then jumps back? I've just started watching a guy's YouTube channel called Goosebumps Aussie Fan Number 1, who's like the most amazing Goosebumps fan ever. And he's got everything that I would ever want as a kid and now as a 26-year-old adult. So yeah, if he's watching, hi. Please let me know if I'm wrong, because you'll know more than anybody. that, as far as I can remember off the top of my head, this is the only book that I know, and I'm probably completely wrong, which starts kind of in the middle of the story, then jumps backwards. Yeah, they're digging a grave. They don't say why they're digging the grave. They're just really scared and they need this grave to be dug. And then it jumps back 2 weeks later, where Brittany's at home and her horrible cousin Ethan is coming to stay. Now she's dreading it, not just because he's a boy, and because she just wants to sit and play with her friends. She's dreading it because he's like a really nasty person. He's always like making fun of her and kicking her and getting her in trouble. So she's really dreading him coming, and not just that, but she's being forced out of her bedroom. Like, I don't know if you remember this from when you were young. If you ever had like lots of family staying over, you would often have to sleep somewhere else. And it was really inconvenient. Like, you've got your room, that's your sanctuary, that's your place, that's your special place. So you get family come over and you have to sleep somewhere else so that they get a comfy bed. But yeah, her cousin's coming, she doesn't like him, she's given up her room, so she's really not happy. And they mentioned that his parents are they've gone away because they're quite neglectful and they've been ill a lot, and it's not really very clear as to what's actually wrong with his parents. It's just they're kind of very what's the word I'm looking for? They're very vague about it. But my guess is, from someone reading this as an adult, that their parents just got that stressed out that he's that much of a dick, which we'll get into more later on. That they just wanted to go on holiday and just get rid of him for a little bit of time. So he's coming to stay with Brittany, and it's kind of weird that Brittany's parents expect Brittany to take care of him, rather than it being like a family effort. They're very much like, Brittany, you have to take care of Ethan whilst he's here. I'm just going to be my microphone, so I apologise if there's a lot of noise. There we go. And so when he arrives, he's like blonde-haired, blue eyes, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, he looks really, really innocent. And he brings along, shock horror, a ventriloquist dummy. And for anybody who's read anything about Goosebumps, this ventriloquist dummy is Slappy. But he doesn't know it's Slappy. His name for the dummy is Mr. Bad Boy. And Mr. Bad Boy has a catchphrase which he says all the time, which is, "I'm a bad boy." Which is really cheesy. Like, I know Goosebumps is cheesy, but Mr. Bad Boy, of all the names he could have picked, R.L. Stine, Mr. Bad Boy, come on, man. But obviously, as readers, we know that Mr. Bad Boy is probably Slappy. It's not confirmed yet, because I do remember from the original Goosebumps book, there is another puppet as well, Mr. Wood. Yeah, Mr. Wood. So it's not confirmed that it's Slappy, but we pretty much guessed that it probably is going to be. And as soon as he arrives, Mr. Bad Boy hits Brittany on the head, and she's like, "What the hell have you done, Ethan? Why have you hit me on the head?" And Ethan blames it on the dummy. And nothing really happens with that at that point. Obviously, it's going to start to build up again shortly. But Brittany goes to her best friend Molly's house to hang out with her and to kind of get away from Ethan. But her parents force her to take Ethan with her, because they don't want him to just come on holiday for 2 weeks and then she just abandons him. So they go to Molly's house, and they meet Molly's dad. Obviously, Brittany already knows him, but he's like a folklore expert, so he goes around the different countries around the world collecting like voodoo dolls and like mystical items and that kind of thing. And he keeps them all upstairs in his attic. And when they arrive to Molly's house, he spots Ethan's dummy. And he's kind of like, "I recognise that dummy. I don't know where from, I don't know why, but I really recognise that dummy." And nothing comes to him, so that's kind of left alone for now. But he invites them all upstairs to his attic to see all the mystical items that he's got. And as Molly and Brittany and Ethan are walking through this attic and describing the various things that they've seen, it really reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen this film, have you any of you seen the film The Conjuring? If you haven't, it's about, it's now 2 horror films about it's kind of a film based on the real life adventures of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are like ghost hunters. Not necessarily ghost hunters, but they help people who were like houses with possessed ghosts and stuff, and poltergeists. And they have a room in their house where from every case they take like an item that was possessed, or an item that the ghost uses as a conduit, like creepy items. And they keep it all in a room in their house. And they keep it all locked away and under the right kind of protection that it needs. So as Brittany and Molly are walking around this attic with all these creepy items, it really reminded me of that film, which I thought was really cool. Now I'm going to get back into the attic a bit more later on, because I have some really good ideas for the attic about how that could spawn more Goosebumps books. But I'll explain that later on. Anyway, they're in the attic, and Molly's dad is really excited to show them an item that he's just got. He's just been on holiday and been to an island called Mumba, and he's found this new doll which he's really excited to show them. So he leads them towards a glass case with a dummy in it, and it's a dummy with a wooden body and a shrunken head. Now I'm going to get into the shrunken head again a bit later on, because obviously that possibly links to another Goosebumps books. We're not too sure, but I'll get into that. So there's this dummy with a shrunken head and a wooden body, and it's called the Mind Stealer. And the legend about this doll is that if anybody touches it, its eyes open, it starts to glow, and there's this really loud buzzing sound which gets into your head, and it sucks your brain out. Not literally sucks your brain out, but it sucks your mind. So your mind goes into the case, into the doll, and then you turn into like a vegetable, like a mute, like in a coma, I guess. Not in a coma, but like people who are like, they're brain dead, but they're still awake. There's just nothing. They can't do anything. They can't speak. They can't think. So yeah, that's the effect the doll has on you, which is pretty scary. And Ethan knocks Brittany into the case. He says by accident, but I'm going to guess it's on purpose because he's a dick. And she hears this buzzing sound, and she freaks out. She's like, oh no, my mind's going to be stolen. But in typical Goosebumps fashion, it's a good old Goosebumps fake out. And it's a particularly ridiculous fake out. Like, I can understand fake outs where something jumps out of the darkness and tries to grab them, and it's their friend playing a prank on them. Because that makes sense, friends do that. But in this one, she falls into the case, hears the buzzing sound, thinks the mind's been sucked out, and it turns out that it's just her phone in her pocket vibrating. I do admit that I laughed at this point because I thought that was slightly ridiculous. Like, I do love Goosebumps for the really bad fake out cliffhangers. I love it. It's just so nostalgic for me. But yeah, so her phone's vibrating in her pocket, and that's about it really. They kind of probably stay for a bit longer and then go home. So back at home, Ethan is showing Brittany his act with Mr. Bad Boy. And the act is quite rude, there's some offensive jokes, and in a nice Goosebumps twist, Brittany actually really likes the act. Like, I do remember from watching the TV show and from old books that I'm sure when Night of the Living Dummy they would always be really rude, or when Slappy would be talking for them, there'd always be really offensive jokes and insulting people, and the family would always be like really offended, and really nobody in the family would like it. It would be like a, oh no, what are you saying kind of thing. But I liked that Brittany liked the jokes. I thought that was quite a nice take on it. But as he puts the dummy down and walks off, its mouth opens up in an ugly laugh, as it's described. And Brittany's like really impressed. She's like, how did you do that? And Ethan's like, I didn't do that. It wasn't me. But Brittany's not convinced because she knows what Ethan's like. And there's also this other storyline going on, which comes into play later on, where Brittany is in a class where she has to do a 1-hour community service. So what she's going to do is go to a retirement home, which I think she has some sort of family member staying at. It could be an aunt. I don't remember exactly about that part. But so she's going to this retirement home to do some painting and invites Ethan along to do a ventriloquism act. And the head starts, as she's explaining this to Ethan, the dummy's head starts moving again, and it starts shouting about how it's alive. Again, she's not convinced that it's alive, but she's now starting to get a bit dubious because all this stuff's happening when Ethan's not close by, and he's so adamant that it's not him. But she's like, I know what Ethan's like. He's a bit of a player. He likes to play tricks. So for now, I'm just going to assume that it's him. It's mentioned as well that Brittany's got a poster of her favourite band in her room called Schoolboy, who Ethan happens to mention that is Mr. Bad Boy's favourite band, and he wants the poster. And she's like, no, I'm not giving him the poster. It's like, you've already got my room, you're not having my posters as well. And he explains how Mr. Bad Boy is probably not going to be happy with that. And she has this painting of a dog that she used to have called Phoebe, and that's in a room as well. So again, there's a lot of little things that are being introduced now, which are play a lot more later on, which is quite nice. But anyway, they go to dinner. Mrs. Cosby, I think her name is Cosby, has cooked quite a nice meal. And as they're eating dinner, Mr. Bad Boy starts shouting about how horrible the meal is and how he'd rather eat roadkill than that meal. And Brittany's trying not to, but she keeps laughing because she actually thinks it's quite funny, because it's just the doll talking and saying this horrible stuff. And in typical parent fashion, not just in Goosebumps but in real life, but in particular Goosebumps, because Goosebumps are known for having really bad parenting, Brittany gets in trouble for laughing. Ethan gets not in any trouble, because obviously they're going to assume that Ethan's saying these horrible jokes, even though it's possibly the doll. Ethan gets in no trouble whatsoever, but Brittany gets in trouble for laughing because parent logic. And she fills Molly in on what's happening, that she's getting in trouble, and the dog keeps talking. But at that point, not much really happens. And later on, she actually finds in her bedroom that a poster for Schoolboy's been ripped in half, the frame's been cracked, and the painting of the dog's got like red paint all over it, which kind of is a nice kind of callback to, I want to say, Night of the Living Dummy 2. I believe one of the characters is a painter and her painting gets destroyed. I remember that more from the TV episode than I do the book. And she goes off to confront Ethan because obviously she's convinced it's Ethan, but he's in the shower when she goes into his room. And she sees the dummy on the bed. And as she goes to, I can't remember if she goes to leave the room or goes towards the dummy starts to move and looks at her and is like, I don't like you, Brittany. I don't like you, Brittany. I do apologise. Every now and again I might do terrible impressions and I'm so sorry. But yeah, she starts shouting, I don't like you, Brittany. 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 I really wish I could do it in like the original Slappy's voice from the TV show, because that was such a good voice. It was such a spot-on impression for what I imagine Slappy would sound like. But yeah, at this point she's convinced this dummy is alive. Ethan was in the shower. There's no way he could have done what just happened. There's no way he could have done that. The dummy is alive. And obviously she goes to tell her parents, because stupid, never tell your parents, they're never going to believe you. She goes to tell her parents and they're like, no, you've got a fever, you've had a nightmare, just all the typical excuses they come up with, because they never listen to their kids very much in these books. But they actually go one step further and say, because you're hanging out with Molly and her dad has all this creepy stuff in the attic, we're not letting you hang out with her anymore. I mean, that's harsh, man. I mean, a parent should go up to Mr. Malloy and say, look, I don't want you showing my child this thing, because it kind of, I believe it's affecting her and giving her nightmares. But not letting her hang out with her best friend because her dad has all this freaky stuff in the attic is really unfair. So yeah, she's not allowed to see Molly anymore, so she's really angry. She doesn't know what to do about this dummy. She doesn't know what to do about Ethan. And now she's not allowed to see her best friend. But the next morning, she gets up in the morning, as normal, trying to forget about what's happened, but still annoyed. And she walks out of her bedroom and sees Ethan coming out with Mr. Bad Boy. And as they start to walk downstairs, she feels hands on her back pushing downstairs. And I really expected, in a Goosebumps, because it's Goosebumps and they have a lot of fake outs, that she would get pushed and then she would grab herself, she would grab the banister, or she would kind of stumble but catch herself. But no, she actually gets pushed all the way down the stairs, which is quite a violent act for a Goosebumps book, so I was quite impressed. I liked it. And it kind of has a darker twist later on, but I'll get into that. And she's convinced that it was Mr. Bad Boy that pushed her, because she said she can feel wooden hands on her back. But obviously no one believes her, because would you believe her? I don't know. They just say, like, you've fallen down the stairs, no one pushed you, don't be silly. And as she's like lying down in pain, Ethan must be near her, because the dummy leans into her and kind of whispers, don't ever snitch on me again. Now, yeah, it's kind of creepy that this doll's like threatening her. He never says what he's going to do to her, but obviously it's not going to be good. He just pushed her down the stairs, for God's sake. I mean, that can kill people if they hit the head the right way or snap the neck or something. So for a 12-year-old girl to be pushed down some stairs is really, really horrible. And it begins to really affect her. Like, she's really not happy anymore. She's really scared. Not much happens that day, but in the middle of the night, she gets a call from Molly, who's like begging her for help. She's like, I'm really, really, really scared. You need to come over immediately. And she says, like, with the job that Mr. Malloy does, he sent off for more information about this Mind Stealer doll. And although Mr. Malloy's gone on holiday, one of his research team have kind of called to try and get hold of him, and they couldn't get hold of him obviously because he wasn't there. But they passed the message on to Molly and basically said, this Mind Stealer doll is really dangerous. Like, you should not have it in the house. It is not safe to be around. You need to bury it in a graveyard. And obviously Molly starts to freak out because she has to live in this house with this really scary doll. And I think she's got a housekeeper, but that character never really plays much of a part in it. So Brittany runs over to the house in the middle of the night and he's like, right, I'll help you, don't worry, I'm going to help you get rid of this. So they get the glass coffin that the Mind Stealer's in, and they go towards the graveyard, and then we join up where we met them at the beginning of the book. So yeah, at the beginning of the book, as they're in the graveyard burying a coffin, obviously at the time you immediately think they're going to be burying Slappy, because it's a book about the living dummy, which is always Slappy, or potentially someone different. So I obviously thought at the beginning, right, well, this is pretty cool. You're already seeing them kind of trying to take out Slappy, and then jumping back before they even knew he existed. But obviously that's not the case. They're burying a completely different doll, not even involved with Slappy. It's the Mind Stealer. And yeah, I forgot to mention at the very beginning, at the end of the beginning chapter, when they're in the graveyard, something grabs Brittany's ankle, which obviously you think as well might be something to do with what's in the coffin. So yeah, they're in the graveyard, they're burying the coffin, Brittany's ankle gets grabbed, and shock horror, it's Ethan. He heard her get up out of bed, and he's followed her to the graveyard, and he's mocking them, like, why are you burying a doll in the middle of the night? This is really weird. You girls are really kind of wusses. I don't know if he says that, but I'm kind of elaborating a bit more. Yeah, he just really mocks them for what they're doing. Anyway, they kind of bury the doll and forget about that, and it's all, that kind of storyline's over for now. And it comes to the day where Brittany and Ethan have to go to Sunset House, the retirement home, to paint for Brittany's aunt and for the rest of the team, rest of the old people. And there's like old people in like wheelchairs, and there's deaf women. So it's like a typical retirement home, really. But let me have a look. Yeah, the painting class goes really well. She teaches them how to paint like a sunset after the name of the house, a Sunset House. That goes really well, no problems whatsoever. And then it becomes Ethan's turn. Now, anyone with any brain cells reading this know that something bad is about to happen. And Ethan realises it as well. You can see it in his face as he walks towards the kind of the staging area, wherever they're like performing. Brittany notices that there's a really worried look on his face, and she's like, why is he so worried? And yeah, Ethan starts his act, and it starts off okay, but very, very quickly it turns into really offensive jokes. Jokes like, do you know how I can tell when someone's old? By the smell. And really insulting jokes to old people. And Ethan starts to really apologise. It's like, I'm not making these jokes up, this is like Mr. Bad Boy's fault, I'm really sorry. But obviously, Mr. Bad Boy carries on, no one believes him, insulting how they look, what clothes they wear, and all this really horrible stuff, and he's begging Mr. Bad Boy to stop. But Mr. Bad Boy takes it another step too far, and grabs Brittany's paint cans and starts throwing them at the old people. Like, this is abuse now. Not only is Mr. Bad Boy pushing an old woman down the stairs, he's now throwing paint cans at old women, and getting them covered out in paint. But one thing that is mentioned in the book, it's a little, because I make notes obviously to do these reviews, I noted down a little quote that was in the book which made me laugh quite a bit. And after describing like how old these people are at the beginning of the chapter, or that section of the book, it says that as they're getting like attacked by these paint cans, that the old people start stampeding from the room. Now, whenever I hear the word stampede, I automatically think of the film Jumanji, where Robin Williams is like listening to the the bookshelf, and he goes, "Stampede!" and runs away, and these rhinos and elephants start charging through the wall. So when it mentioned that all these old women were stampeding from the room, I had like a really funny image of them all like bolting out through the wall and leaving like a great big hole in the wall. Like really super powered old women just bolting out of the room. So that really made me laugh. But so that really goes horribly wrong, and Brittany's obviously really ashamed because she brought Ethan along, and so she's not in good books with the Sunset House. And she's really concerned about this dummy, because she's really starting to believe now that this dummy is the one that's doing everything. She sees the look on Ethan's face about how scared he is, and how he probably wouldn't take it that far. Like, his jokes in the past were mean. He would like hurt her a little bit by kicking her, and typical childish stuff, but the stuff he's doing now is just taking it too far. So she's convinced the dummy is alive. Mr. Bad Boy is behind everything. So she tries to ring in a really smart move. Like, I was really impressed by this. Maybe because I don't remember this happening much in the older books, because I've not read them for so long. But normally they try to deal with it on their own, because they talk to a parent and nothing happens. But she tries to contact Mr. Malloy, which I thought was a really nice move, because he's the expert on these things. He recognised the dummy when he saw it. So she was like, if I ring him, he might be able to tell me what this doll is, and who he is, what I can do about it. And I thought that was a really good move. Oh, pardon me, sneezing. I'm so sorry. But Brittany's dad's obviously Molly's dad's still on holiday, so there's nothing they can do there. But Molly says she's found some more research on the doll, so come over. Now obviously she has to sneak out because she's not allowed to see Brittany, or she's not allowed to see Molly, sorry. But goes to Molly's house, and they pull out this folder which is all about the doll, and they're reading on the backstory of what they now know is called Slappy. And they read the story about the evil sorcerer in the 1800s who created Slappy from a stolen coffin, which was cursed. The wood of it was cursed. And I only know this from following YouTubers like Goosebumps Aussie Fan Number 1 and This Time You're 83, I think it was, when they were talking about old Goosebumps books. I never realised that we actually found this out in an earlier book. I think it was Slappy's Nightmare, about the cursed coffin, because I remember quite a bit of the Goosebumps series 2000. I don't have a lot of memory of, even though I've read it and loved it. I really have a little memory of that, so I'm so excited to read them again. But I thought this was a brand new information, so I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. Like, we've never known about where Slappy came from before. I was so excited. But apparently I was wrong. Apparently I was very wrong. But for me anyway, it was really exciting because I loved that this is a brand new series of Goosebumps, and they're trying to give us some backstory on really classic villains and bad guys and stuff. Like, I've read Say Cheese and Die Screaming, and that gives you a backstory on where the camera came from, which I thought was awesome. Like, I love that kind of stuff. It's the kind of stuff as a kid you don't really care about. You don't care about the backstory, and in some ways that kind of makes it creepy. Like, if you ever watch Halloween with Michael Myers, the creepy part about him is he's just evil. There's no reason for it. You don't know a lot about it. You don't know what happened to him particularly, other than the fact that he killed his sister. He's just evil, and with Slappy that was kind of the spooky thing as a kid. He's just an evil dummy. We don't know why. We don't know when he became evil. He was just evil. So seeing his backstory start to come into it was fantastic. And yeah, they're reading the information about him, about when he was made, and his sole purpose is to, once he's awakened, he enslaves his owners to become his like puppets, his like slaves. And they find the magic words to wake him up. They're actually in the folder. And I love the idea about this dossier, this folder, all about Slappy, how he's become so notorious and so villainous that there's actually like folders of research on Slappy. I love that. I really love that, but I'll try and mention that again a bit later on if I remember. So they find the words, the Karu, Mari, Adona, Loma, Molyneux, Carano. And so they're like, right, it says these are the words to wake him up, and these are the words to put him to sleep. Fantastic, let's go, let's do this. So they go to Ethan's room, and Ethan's not in, it's just Slappy sat on the bed, or Mr. Bad Boy. And they read the magic words, and after they read the magic words, the dummy slumps over, because it was sat up. So it slumps over, and it looks basically dead. So they're like, finally, oh my god, it's like Brittany's like, it breathes a sigh of relief, it's over. But then Molly gets like this strange look on her face and she's like, Brittany, I think there's something that you need to see. And she's like, oh no, like I thought this was over. And she goes over and they find a remote control. This is the part where I start to get really confused about what's happening. Because I wasn't expecting this. So they find this remote control. And they press one of the buttons on the remote control. And Dummy's, Slappy's head moves. And like, press another and he's like, his mouth opens. And they press another button and it says, I don't like you, Brittany. And they press another button and it says something else. And it clicks. All along, everything that's happened from the start of this book was Ethan with a remote control. Which I thought was a fantastic twist. Like, obviously in the first ever Night of the Living Dummy book, there's a twist about how it wasn't Slappy, it was a different puppet. And then Slappy comes to life at the end. But this was the fantastic twist. I'll talk about it in a bit. I'll talk about my thoughts on it when I review the story. So they find out it was Ethan all along. He was the one hitting her. He was the one destroying the paintings. He was the one that pushed her down the stairs. So she's furious. She's fuming. Like, I knew it. I knew Ethan was just horrible. Ethan was really, really horrible. He's always been this person. Like, why did I start to believe it? Why? I knew what he was like. So she's furious. And she starts to get really angry. It says she starts to like try and trash his room because she's so angry. But she actually only does two things that's mentioned that I can remember. Because I wrote them down. So I think if there was more, I probably would have said. But two of the things she does when she's really angry, I was like howling with laughter. Because she's so angry. And so like, oh, like betrayed. And so what does she do? She picks up a packet of crisps. And she tips the crisps out over his keyboard. Or chips as they're known in America. And so she picks up a packet of crisps. And she just throws them on his keyboard. And then she picks up a pair of his jeans. And just throws the jeans across the room. And that's it. Now, I know it's a quiz book. And it's for like 12-year-olds, if not younger. Or around that age. So they're not going to go like fully mental and start throwing like televisions out the window. But this is a book where people have been abused. Pushed down the stairs and old people have stuff thrown at them. By a 12-year-old boy. I think he's 12. So the fact that she had like a really weak attempt at trashing his room by throwing a packet of crisps around and a pair of jeans just really made me laugh. It's like, at least like destroy the dummy. Surely that would be the one thing that you would do. You would like rip the dummy's head off. Or you would do something to the dummy because he's like the symbol of the torture that you've been under. But anyway, she kind of gets over that really quickly. She goes to bed like that night and she's like, okay, I'm pissed off, but it's over. I've found out that it's Ethan. I know I'm not going crazy anymore. I know it's not a dummy. I can confront him about it tomorrow. But I can sleep well tonight for the first time in ages. It's all finally over. But if anyone's been paying attention to what's been going on, what's happened? What has happened so far? Well, the dummy was never awake. It was Ethan all along. And what did Brittany do? She read the magic words. And what did the magic words do? As well as put him to sleep, they awaken Slappy from his slumber, or however you want to say it. So, if you've been keeping track, Slappy is now alive. Slappy is now alive and kicking. So, in the middle of the night, Brittany's finally sleeping peacefully for the first time in ages, and she feels this little tapping on her shoulder, like a... I don't know if you could hear that on the microphone. I tapped on the stand I've got the microphone on. So she hears this tapping and wakes up, and right in her face is Slappy, and she screams, and he's like, "Thank you for waking me up, slave." And I thought that was so cool. Like, I love it when Slappy's actually in it. Like, I like the Night of the Living Dummy books from what I can remember from the TV show, because I like how they mess with the people beforehand. They don't just go in like all guns blazing. Slappy and whoever, like, they like to mess with the people. So I like all that part, but I like when Slappy finally comes into his own and starts being Slappy, as we know and love. So he's like, "Yeah, thank you for waking me up, slave." And he grabs her wrist and he's like gripping onto her, and he's kind of threatening her, saying, "If you even try and tell your parents, all they're going to do is send you to a doctor. They're going to send you to like a crazy place because they're never going to believe you about a doll being alive. You tried it once before, and they're never going to believe you." and he really wants to make her be his slave. And he, even though he was sleeping, he could hear what was going on. So it's kind of like a coma, technically, because they do say if you're in a coma and people talk to you, you can hear them. And he mentions that he heard Ethan talking about the Mind Stealer, and he wants it for himself. And he threatens Brittany with what he's going to do to her with the Mind Stealer. And then a really weird thing happens. There's a line in the book which I've read it a few times because I was like, did he really just say that? Like, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so Slappy's made out of wood, okay? He doesn't seem like the type of doll. He's not the type of doll like Chucky, for example, because Chucky's rubbery. So the next line that I'm going to read out, I could kind of sort of see it happening in Chucky. But this is a wooden doll, and it says that Slappy stuck out. Pardon me. He stuck out his skinny stomach and giggled. Now, forgive me for being stupid here, but surely if a dummy is made of wool, it can't stick out his stomach. His body is just one wooden object. Or maybe two, I don't know. I thought the body was just like one wooden solid object, except obviously with a room to put your hand in the back. So how does he stick out his stomach? Because it's never mentioned that when he turns into a dummy, he kind of transforms into kind of something slightly more humanoid. It's always kind of been under my assumption that when he's alive, he's still just a wooden dummy with the hole in his back and all that, but he's just conscious and he can walk and talk. So the fact that he stuck out his skinny stomach and giggled, just like a tongue twister again, I didn't like that. I thought that was a weird line that didn't make sense. Like, please comment if you got a bit more insight to that or to your opinion of that line. It just seemed odd. It didn't sit right with me. I didn't really like that. But I did like the fact that, Slappy's woken up now and he's threatening her. He's like, I heard what you're talking about. I want that doll. I'm going to make you my slave. You can't tell your parents because they're going to send you to a mental asylum. And Brittany's just like, no, bugger off. I'm not helping you. See ya. Like, bye Felicia, that kind of stuff. She's just like, no, I'm not going to help you, Slappy. No, I finally know you're alive now, but no, I don't feel like helping you today. I love that. It was just like, no, computer says no. That's a very British reference, so I'm sorry if you don't understand that, if anyone's listening from America or Australia or whoever. But yeah, so she refuses to go help him. Slappy's just like, right, fine, you're not going to help me, I'll go to the graveyard on my own, I'm sure I can find it. And because you're not going to help me, as soon as I get that doll, I'm going to suck your mind and you're going to be my slave. So, Slappy hauls ass, he's off. He bolts out of the house. He's running down the street towards the graveyard. Now, I keep saying now, which I shouldn't keep saying. He must be one fast little bugger because Brittany takes chase after him pretty quickly. Like, it's not long before he's like on top of her that Brittany kind of chases after him. But she only actually catches up with him when he's in the cemetery and he's pretty much dug up the whole coffin. I mean, come on, the dummy's legs are tiny, so he could probably move really fast, yeah, but he must be super fast to kind of outrun a 12-year-old and go to a graveyard and dig up a whole coffin. But anyway, Slappy arrives at the graveyard, Brittany follows him, sees him digging up the coffin and kind of runs at him and tackles him. And she's kind of having a bit of a fight with him, and she lifts him right above her head in like a moment where I don't know why, but I kind of imagine going like, this is Sparta! Because she was like holding the dummy over her head, like, I don't even know like what I'm referencing, but like a really like gladiator, like where they lift the victims over the head and like, rah! She's going like mental on this doll, and she's lifting it over her head, and then there's like a bright beam of light, and it's not from the Mind Stealer doll, which she's trying to dig up. It's actually a car headlights. And Brittany's parents have actually followed her out. They heard her get up and they're really worried about her, so they drove after her to the graveyard, and they see she's like in the middle of the graveyard with a coffin dug up, all dirty because she's been rolling around, and she's got the doll like above her head, and they're like, Brittany, we're really worried about you, like we're going to have to send you to a specialist. Which I kind of loved as well. Like, I could be wrong again because I've not read them for so long, But the parent, from what I can remember, and please comment and correct me if I'm wrong, but the parents always like ignore the kids, don't they? And just say like, no, you're imagining stuff, you're having a nightmare. But they never get to the point where actually say, we're going to have to send you to a doctor. We're not convinced that you're in the right mental state. We're going to have to send you to a doctor. I could be completely mistaken on that. But I thought that was quite a good adult dark twist. Like, these parents are going, we're seriously worried about your mental health, Brittany. We're going to have to send you to a psychiatrist. You might need to be, locked up or just have some serious therapy. So Brittany kind of like lowers the doll and she's like really not sure what to do because she knows the dummy's alive. She knows the dummy's evil and they actually got plans to attack her and most likely going to be her family afterwards. But her parents were in front of her going, you're crazy, you're a mental case. And she's got Slappy in her ear, like taunting her and whispering to her and making little remarks to kind of drive her over the edge. And she just loses it and goes all Rambo on him. So she picks the dummy up again and like throws him at the glass coffin. And she throws him that hard, so she's got like the muscles of like an Olympian. Because she throws the wooden dummy that hard that it smashes through the glass coffin. And as it smashes through the glass coffin, Slappy touches the Mind Stealer doll. And there's the bright white light and Slappy starts kind of flapping around, being electrocuted. And like he's been struck by lightning. And he's flashing around, he's dancing around, and then he slumps down. And that's it. Slappy's mind has now been sucked into the doll. That's it. Slappy now, the dummy of Slappy, is now just a dummy. Slappy's not in there anymore. He's now in the Mind Stealer doll. The thing I didn't like about this part is somehow there's this bright white light that's flashing and electricity and loud noises, but Brittany's parents don't see it. They just don't see it at all. They're like, I have no idea, but they just don't see it. You don't seem to see Brittany throw the dummy either, because they're very much like, because Brittany says, it's over now, I don't need to go see a doctor, look, it's over, no more stories about Slappy, that thing's over now, it's just, I was going through a phase, I was messed up, or whatever, it's done. And the parents just go, okay, if you're sure, I believe you. Like, what is that? 2 minutes ago, they were convinced that she needed mental help. And she now just goes, no, I don't. And they go, okay, dear, we believe you. We didn't see that big flashing light in the distance. We didn't see that dummy flinging about, making loads of noise. It's fine. We're just going to turn our blind eye on it and we're just going to let you be a mental case, okay? So, yeah, I didn't. It's just ridiculous, like. Oh, anyway, it's a kid's book. I shouldn't be reading into too much about it. I liked it, don't get me wrong. But Dad picks up Slappy, who's obviously empty now, and takes the dummy away, and Brittany buries the glass coffin with the Mind Stealers in, and is saying like that's the end of it. And as she's about to leave to go towards the car where her parents are to take her home, there's this voice from under the ground which just says, I'll be back, Brittany. I'm a bad boy. Da, da, da. Yeah, so Slappy is still alive in the Mind Stealer. I'll get to my opinion on the end twist later on, because if any of you have ever watched the 2 Shivers reviews that I've done, I do a few different things. I go through the story itself, and then I go through various different plot points, like ones that aren't explained, or ones that I would like to see more explanation on, things that aren't answered, like open plot points. And then, because Goosebumps are known for their good and bad cliffhangers, I tell you my least favourite and my most favourite cliffhanger, like one that I think works and why, and what was my favourite cliffhanger. Yes, as I said in the Shivers, it's a bit sad. Do I care? No, because these books are my childhood, and yes, these are brand new books, but I adore Goosebumps. And one of the things they're famous for, and I love them for, is their end of chapters. Like, they're known for all the cliffhangers and the fake outs, and I loved it as a kid. So I go through the open plot points, my worst cliffhanger, my best cliffhanger. I review the cover, I review the story, including the end twist if there is one, if I like the twist or not, and then I rate the book overall. And then should I ever get any followers, subscribers, please subscribe and please listen to me, somebody. I know it takes time to get out there. I'll answer any questions or comments or shout outs or whatever at the end of the review. So yeah, the story ends with Slappy being sucked into the Mind Stealer doll, but we can still hear him alive inside the doll, and that's it. And like I said, I'm going to review the Horrorland section of that story another time, because that's just the way I want to do it. It will help me keep things in track a bit more. I did forget to mention at the start of the book that the section, Revenge of the Living Dummy section, is 22 chapters long and consists of 93 pages, which is actually quite short for a Goosebumps book, obviously because it's two different stories technically. But yeah, I'll get to whether I thought short was good or not in a bit. So open plot points. Yeah, so I've made a list of the things that I kind of, when I finish the book, because I've wrote down notes on the first, what did I say last time that I've read? The first 9 that I've read, up to Welcome to Camp Slither. Once I finish the book, I make a note of things that I would like to see more of, or things that I'd like answered, but I'm not bothered if they're not, kind of thing, most of the time. So yeah, open plot points for this one. I would like to know how Ethan got Slappy. It's never explained in some of the Goosebumps books. He just kind of appears. He's just kind of there. They just find him at various places. Like I think in the first one, do they find him in a dustbin? No, they find him in a. Is it like the remains of a house or a building? I'm sorry, I don't remember properly. But the reason that I mention this relates to the fact that they found that like dossier file on Slappy about how he's so notorious that he's got his own file and there's research about Slappy in history. I think that's amazing. And my idea that I came up with, which I think would be a fantastic idea for a new Goosebumps series, so if anybody ever listens to this and you have contact with R.L. Stine, this is my book, okay, my idea. So if he ever makes a series, I want some like royalties. No, I don't, but you know what I mean. The series I had an idea for is called I'd probably call it like Goosebumps Legends, or like Goosebumps Legends or something like that. And basically, it will cover some of the most famous, iconic characters from each series, and it will be like a history book, not like a factual, although it could be technically to some degree, but more like a story about the history of the character. So about the magician that, say, the first book was about Slappy, about the magician that created Slappy. Why he did it, when he did it, how he did it, and how did he create Slappy? Did Slappy turn on his owner, like a whole Frankenstein thing? And how Slappy got from book to book, like what did he do in the hundreds of years before the first book? How did he end up where they found him in the first book? I'd like to know, just because I think it'd be a really good concept, how did he get from book 1 to 2? Like where did he go in between? And how all the books tie in together? I think for a Goosebumps fan, from being a kid to being an adult, it would be a really good, not a sense of closure, but it'd be a really like geeky, nerdy, satisfactory book that would make me feel so satisfied, and having this book that really ties the Night of the Living Dummy together as a proper series, rather than just random Night of the Living Dummy books where he just appears at these new houses and causes mayhem. A book that would link them all together, and the same with things like The Haunted Mask, maybe, or Say Cheat and Die with a Camera. Something that would link them all together would be amazing. Like I might do another. Sorry, my mind went blank then. I might do another book, a video on that at some point, just to explain like my ideas. I don't know. I might not. We'll see. If anybody likes the idea, then I might do. But do you think that would be a good idea? To have like a legend series where we find out the full and pure history, and it really ties the books together. So yeah, I'd like to know how Ethan got Slappy, but I never expected that to be explained particularly, because that's just the way the Goosebumps books work. Another thing that I'd like a bit more information on, the shrunken head in the doll, the Mind Stealer doll. Like obviously it's never mentioned whether it's the shrunken head from the book How I Got My Shrunken Head from the original Goosebumps series, but I think it is the same doll, and shrunken head, and I'll tell you why. There's 2 reasons really. One is that I think it'd be very, very weird for R.L. Stine to come up with this brand new series of Goosebumps after years of not writing them. And he decides to do the first book about the classic Goosebumps villain Slappy. Fair enough, great, fantastic. And then for him to put in a shrunken head in the first book, and for it not to be the shrunken head that people know about, I think it'd be too much of a coincidence. People out there might disagree, so please, obviously, let me know. We can talk about it. But in my head, it'd be too much of a coincidence after years of not writing Goosebumps for him to put a shrunken head in it and it not to be related. I mean, there's never been an official confirmation on whether these books take place in the same universe, other than the fact that the Horrorland series all carry on from each other. So, with that series carrying on from each other, it's fair to assume that all these books happen in the same kind of world, like the Goosebumps movie, kind of, to a degree. So it's fair to assume that somehow that shrunken head is the one from How I Got My Shrunken Head. I mean, that'd be a nice... Even so, just for hardcore Goosebumps fans, even if it's not, it's a nice little kind of throwback to classic Goosebumps. I love that. As soon as it said it's got a shrunken head, sorry if I keep talking too fast, I was like, yeah, it's got to be the shrunken head. It's so cool. And another reason why I thought it might be is I don't remember the book. I'm not going to lie. I'll put my hands up. I've not read the book since I was a kid. I actually remember reading that book in primary school. I remember reading it the night of we had a primary school disco. But I'll get into that when I get to reviewing How I Got My Shrunken Head. Because before each book, I'll probably do like my kind of memory of it, or if I've got any memory of it, that kind of thing. Which I didn't have a lot to say about this one because I've never read it before, although I love Slappy. Yeah, sorry, complete sidetrack. I remember the TV episode more than I remember the book. And I'm sure in the TV episode of How I Got My Shrunken Head, I'm sure the doll opens its eyes and they glow, and there's these like zombie people that like hold the main guy hostage in that camp that he goes to, and they've got like glowing eyes. I'm sure there are. So there's a doll with a shrunken head that sucks your brain and you act like a zombie and like a slave. That's got to be the same doll, right? Same shrunken head, right? Because I'm sure that's what happened in the TV episode. No idea if it happens in the book, I'm sorry to say. Again, please let me know. But that's my opinion, that at least it's like a nice little related part to the Goosebumps series. I would say it's the same shrunken head, but we don't know for definite. Another thing is, Ethan never gets any comeuppance. I love the twist, which I'll get into, about Ethan being behind it, but it's kind of never resolved. Like, yay, we know it's Ethan. Obviously, Slappy then takes over as the bad guy. But it would be good to see Ethan get some sort of comeuppance, because he did a lot of bad things. Like, he pushed Brittany down the stairs, for God's sake. I could kill her. He threw things at all people. He destroyed Brittany's property. He was insulting to the family that kept him, give him a home when his parents didn't want him for a couple of weeks. So I would have liked to see some comeuppance for Ethan, some sort of kind of retribution for what he did to Brittany, but never mind. Another thing is, how does Slappy talk at the end? It's mentioned earlier on in the book that the Mind Stealer has stole about 20 minds, allegedly so far. And at no point in the whole book does it speak, or does Mr. Malloy ever mention that it talks. So why can it speak at the end when Slappy's in there? I don't think we're going to ever get an explanation to that. Unless... I would hope that there's some sort of explanation as to how Slappy gets from inside the Mind Stealer doll to Horrorland. Because, although I'm not going to talk about the last part of the book, obviously, as you can tell by the cover, Slappy ends up in Horrorland, basically. And there's no explanation as to how he got between point A and point B. I would hope maybe when the books are like solely in Horrorland, and what I'm going to guess Slappy's going to be one of the main villains. I don't know yet. I hope they explain how he got out of there, because it's a really weird jump for him to be sucked into this doll, which can now magically talk, which I don't agree with, and then to what's the word I'm looking for? He just appears somewhere else back into his own body. So I hope that's explained, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Okay, so that's kind of some of the things that I think were unexplained that I'd like a bit more explanation. So on to the cliffhangers. My least favourite cliffhanger is... Which chapter was it? Okay, yeah, it was chapter number 6. So if you got the book with you, turn to chapter number 6. My least favourite cliffhanger is when they're in the attic with Mr. Malloy looking at the Mind Stealer, and it goes, Ethan stood behind Brittany and he says, and he bumped me hard from behind into the doll case. As my forehead hit the glass, I saw the doll bounce. Then I heard a loud buzz. I gasped, oh no, my mind. And then the next one, the start of chapter 7 is, whoa, wait, I heard the buzz again. My brain whirred. It took me so long to realise this doll wasn't buzzing. The sound came from my mobile phone. Every time I read it makes me laugh. Like, how can you confuse a buzzing from your mobile phone in your pocket to your mind getting sucked out by a doll? Like, don't get me wrong, I love it. I love it because it's Goosebumps, it's classic Goosebumps crap, end of chapters. But, like, in a fake out crap kind of way. But I love it, but it's my least favourite. I didn't like it. In terms of, like, some of the actual good cliffhangers that were in the book. But yeah, I just it wasn't for me really. My favourite cliffhanger is from chapter 17. If you want to turn to chapter 17, so they've just defeated Slappy, Mr. Bad Boy. They just put him to sleep permanently, and it says I expected Molly to jump up and celebrate too, but she didn't move. She stared hard at something on the bed. Molly, what's your problem? I cried. We did it. We're okay now. We put him to sleep. Wait a sec, Britt, Molly murmured. There's something here I think you should see. And basically, start of chapter 18, Molly reached into the pocket of Ethan's crumpled jeans and pulled out a small rectangular object. It looked like a TV clicker. Yeah, so it's the cliffhanger where they discover that all along Ethan was behind it. Like, obviously the cliffhanger isn't that this was Ethan, it's just Molly finding something. But at that point I was quite confused. I was like, I didn't know if it was Mr. Bad Boy because he'd never done anything outright to kind of go, it's me, la 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 la. But I wasn't sure where it was going, so I kind of liked that. It's a cliffhanger where I was like, what's she seen? And then the conclusion to the cliffhanger, where it turns out that Ethan was behind it all along, was fantastic. Like, it was a twist that maybe I'm reading this with nostalgia goggles towards Goosebumps, and because when I read it, I don't try and second guess it. I don't try and figure out what's going to happen. I just sit back and switch my brain off and I enjoy it. I just didn't see that twist coming. So I really like that cliffhanger. That was my favourite one. So least favourite, mind-sucking, is the mobile phone. Most favourite, Molly discovers that Ethan's behind the whole thing. Okay, on to my review of the cover, and then I will review the story. The cover, basically, I love it. I do love it. It's one of the things that actually got me to buy the new Goosebumps. As much as I have all the originals, I know the Goosebumps 2000, so I wanted to collect them anyway, even as an adult. I saw the first cover and I was like, this looks amazing. Like, I know you should never judge a book by the cover, which usually applies to books with rubbish covers and they're actually really good books. But I saw this and I was like, I love that cover. It's Horrorland. I love the big giant dragon mouth and the sharp teeth with Slappy sat on the turnstile underneath. And you can see all the rides, the roller coasters and the Ferris wheel in the background. And there's a little mummy poking out the side on the left. And there's Madame Doom, who's the fortune teller in the park, who I believe comes into play later on more. If I'm correct, she's the one that's actually on the cover of number 10, Help We Have Strange Powers. So I like the fact that even on the covers they're bringing new characters forward and introducing them earlier on. I just love the purple sky, which is opposed to the darky bright green colours, which is like, it's just a nice contrast. Like, it really sticks out. Like Slappy and the fortune teller and the mouth really stick out from the background. Like a nice sense of perspective. And the red glowing eyes of the Horrorland entrance I love. I mean, I guess it's because Horrorland in particular, which I can't remember if I mentioned in the introduction video, which is always one of my all-time favourite Goosebumps books. I had the Horrorland board game, and I had the Horrorland CD-ROM game. I think it's called Escape from Horrorland. Or you played as someone who went to Horrorland with Luke, Lizzie, and Clay. I'd have to save them all. And I loved the Goosebumps episode One Day at Horrorland. Thought that was really cool. But because I'm a massive theme park geek, like I love Disneyland and all that I love rides and theme parks and the attractions and the shops. Just the idea of a horror theme park is up my alley. I love horror and everything about horror. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love horror. I've got a Chucky doll in my bedroom. I've got Freddy figurines, Pinhead figurines, Michael Myers, and all that kind of stuff. Freddy Krueger, I think I mentioned. So yeah, so this theme park about horror I loved. So although I'm not reviewing the end part of the story, the Horrorland part, the cover, I love it. It really enticed me into reading this book. I don't love every cover in the Horrorland series. I'm not ashamed to admit. There's some that I don't like. But I love this one. I love it. So my review of the story, how do I put it? I'll do it short and long. In short, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Whether I would have enjoyed it more reading all the Nightmare of the Living Dummies first beforehand, like I planned to, I don't know, because I do know that the actual storyline is similar to the original Night of the Living Dummy. Like, there's a doll which is causing havoc. They think it's Slappy or Mr. Bad Boy. The twist is, it's not them, it's a different doll, it's Ethan. So, the storyline isn't necessarily original, but because I hadn't read it since I was a kid, I didn't remember that particularly at the time. I just went into it like brand new open eyes, and it was so nice just reading a Goosebumps book again. Like, they're quick reads, they're easy reads, they're not as scary now that I'm a bit older. Or there is parts of this book which is a bit freaky, which I'll explain in a second. I loved it. It's a Slappy book. I'm gonna like it. Slappy is like quintessential Goosebumps. It's Slappy. Everybody who's a big fan of Goosebumps loves Slappy. I mean, why would you not? He's scary. I just loved it. It was a classic Night of the Living Dummy story of this doll that appears and there's havoc and things get destroyed. The doll starts talking and they always go, "No, it wasn't me. It was the doll." So it's very classic, and I'm not ashamed to admit that when they found the remote with Ethan, can't even talk. When they found the remote control, and it turned out it was Ethan that was doing it all, I did go like, "Oh my god!" I wasn't expecting it at all. I don't know why. I was just really shocked. Not as shocked as I was. There was a moment in one of the later books, which I'll explain when I get to it, so you have to hold out for that one, which actually made me gasp. I think because I was tired, but there's a moment where I went, but I just wasn't expecting it. I thought it was a really dark twist, actually. The more you think about it, the scarier it is, because it's not just the fact that Ethan's been kind of playing lots of pranks on Brittany, but he's been abusing her, like physically abusing her and mentally abusing her. Ethan is one, I'm not going to say it because I don't know who's going to be listening to this, but one effed up kid. Like, really messed up, man. He attacked her, pushed her down the stairs, mentally abused her, made her parents think that she needed to go to a shrink, attacked old people, verbally abused the mum. Ethan is not a nice child. I mean, seriously. I mean, how he didn't get into more trouble, because, I mean, the parents had no idea that it was Ethan. But yet, all this stuff was happening, so how did he not get into any trouble? I don't know. But Ethan is messed up. Like, Ethan needs a book of his own. Ethan is like a scary kid. I will be 100% happy if they do a Goosebumps book, and Ethan is the main bad guy. He's in like a mental hospital when he's older or something, and he breaks out. I don't know, it's a really stupid idea. But Ethan is the one messed up kid. The more you think about this book, the more you realise how twisted he is. And how much of a psycho he is. Like, Slappy, in a way, looks kind of tame in comparison to what Ethan does. I mean, he's like Norman Bates in the making. Or like Damien from The Omen. He's just like a demon child. that just like attacks everybody and kills everybody and goes, "It wasn't me, it was my dummy." So that was like a really good twist and a really dark twist, especially like you're getting pushed down the stairs and stuff. I didn't like how the parents were. It didn't bother me at the beginning because they were typical, "No, we don't believe you, you might be having a nightmare," whatever. But how they were towards the end was just stupid, how they believed it straight away that it was all over. But I loved it. I mean, I loved the whole Mind Stealer thing as well. It wasn't necessarily necessary to the storyline, other than when he got the brain sucked at the end, because it kind of felt like a whole new storyline being introduced that wasn't really a part of it. But I guess it helped them with all the information about Slappy and stuff. And another idea I had for not necessarily a spin-off series, but what could be a spin-off series, is Mr. Malloy's attic. If he's got this attic full of creepy artifacts and like voodoo items and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that could be a series on its own, like the history of the artifacts in his attic. I mean, the amount of things that must be in there. Like when I said about The Conjuring, when they go into the attic and they put their items away at the end of a case, you can see it's filled with all these different things. Some that look really interesting. You wonder, I wonder what happened to that. Like, what ghost was that involved with? What case was that involved with? So the same as this with Mr. Malloy's attic. I was very much like I want to know more about this attic. I want to know where he got all these items from. Are they possessed? Were they possessed? Did they, I don't know, do something evil? Do they have good luck or bad luck? I don't know. I mean, it'd be really cool. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if deep in the attic somewhere is the camera from Say Cheese and Die. That's the kind of thing you'd find in there, because it was maybe not like a voodoo item, but it was an item that, you know, you could find that's involved in all that kind of stuff. You could find the camera in there, you could find the haunted mask in there, a cuckoo clock maybe. I don't know, it's a bit of a stretch, I know, but do you know what I mean? It's got like a lot of potential, do you not think? But yeah, and so the story I loved, it's a typical Goosebumps book. Very, very typical Night of the Living Dummy. But that's not a bad thing, because it's the first one I've read for so long, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. The end twist, however, is a different story. I don't like the end twists. I'm sorry to say I didn't like it. I was okay with Slappy being sucked into a different doll, because that's got potential down the line. Because there's always going to be a way for him to get out of the doll. That's pretty much guaranteed. He's not going to be stuck there forever, because it's Slappy. But the fact that he got sucked in, and then he started talking out of the doll, maybe it's going to be like, they can talk just when they first get sucked in, like a last words kind of thing. Maybe. I don't know. But I didn't like it. I'm sorry, guys. I just didn't like the twist. I just thought it was kind of thrown in there for a little bit of a twist. I'm sorry, R.L. Stein. I know you're probably never going to listen to this. I love Goosebumps. I do. I can read what might be classed as one of the worst Goosebumps books, and I will thoroughly enjoy it, because I just switch my brain off from work, and I read a lot of things like Stephen King, which might be a bit of a touchy subject after the Goosebumps movie, which I really like, hard books to get into, which I have to like think a lot in, and just keep track with like 300 characters. But I just didn't like the end twist. I didn't think it worked. I didn't think it made sense. So I'm sorry, but regardless of that, I'm going to give a rating of the book. So I loved most of the book, not maybe the end twist, but I did love the book. I was really shocked by the twist in the middle. I thought that the fact that the book was shorter, it was only 90 odd pages, in some ways it worked in its favour. In some ways it meant they probably had to cut out or not elaborate on things like Ethan getting a comeuppance. Maybe Slappy could have done a bit more if the book was longer. So I'm in two minds about it until I read quite a lot more. I mean, there's some that are short that I've read, and I'm glad they're short, because there's one particular one I didn't really like at all. There's some that were short and good because they were concise and adventurous and lively. This one moved at a decent pace, but I think it being slightly shorter kind of hindered it a little bit. So I think for my rating, I'm going to average it out at about an A-. I'm going to go for an A-. It is a great book. I'm never going to take that away from it, but there's a few things that could have been improved. I would have liked it to be slightly longer. Maybe not the Horrorland bit at the end, but I'll get to that later on in my 11th review of the Goosebumps Horrorland series, because obviously I'm going to do them in order, even though I don't technically have to because I'm only reading the start bit. I am reading the end as well, but I'm going to read them all through again after book 10. A-. If you agree or disagree with my rating, please let me know. If you've got any questions or want to correct probably the multiple wrong things that I said throughout, let me know. My next review is definitely going to be the Shivers that I promised last time. Shivers number 25, A Ghostly Playmate. And then straight after that, I'm going to do a review of Goosebumps Horrorland number 2, Creep from the Deep. I really do want to do some original Goosebumps and Goosebumps 2000s. But I'm going to hold off until I get a chance to get them from my mum's, because all the books are hers, and I don't actually have the room for them at the moment. They would be sat in a pile on the floor, which my flat's that small. I don't really want them to be there just gathering dust in a pile. They might get knocked over, they might get damaged. So I'm going to do A Ghostly Playmate Shivers, Goosebumps Horrorland number 2, and then I promise I'm going to stick to this order. I'm going to do A Ghost of Fear Street. I'm going to do an introductory video for that series as well. I've not got them all yet. But I'm going to do Ghost of Fear Street after that, which is a nice one because I've not read that series at all since I was a kid. So I will stop talking now. I hope you enjoyed. Guys, please leave a like or a comment or subscribe. Let me know what you think and we can get talking. As usual, the link to my Twitter is in the link below, the description below. It's just Nostalgic Nightmares without the vowels. So at NSTLGC I'll put on there what I'm reading once I get some more followers, and if you want to speak to me, that's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, thanks for listening. If anyone's tuned in for this long, I've been talking for, nearly an hour and a quarter. I'm so sorry. So until next time, guys, I hope you enjoyed, and please take care of yourselves and let me know what you think. Good night, guys.